Hello everyone. Here we will discuss about rural sociology, a scope of rural sociology and different topics associated with rural sociology, importance of rural sociology, difference between village and urban areas and rural urban continuum, and we will discuss about green revolution, impact of green revolution, rural leadership and land reform, and many topics regarding associated with sociology, rural sociology especially. Now, rural sociology is the society influenced by rural environment, and keeping this objective in mind, a detailed analysis of the rural social system is being done through various scientific research from the rural environment. With the emergence of rural sociology, it was also determined that this discipline would study not only the structural side of the rural social system, but also its dynamic side, functional aspect, rural structural aspect. Such aspect is called rural social organization. Both aspects are interrelated, structure as well as we will see the function of rural institutions. Rural social structure, function, social processes, rural social relations. The study of rural social problems and changes in the rural social system was considered as the subject matter of rural sociology. Smith, while discussing it is very beautifully, has written that Grammica probably refers to the systematic knowledge of social relationship of rurals. It would be more appropriate to refer under the heading social life, sociology of life of rural. Meaning and definition of rural sociology. From the literal point of view, rural sociology is made up of two words, rural and sociology. Thus we see that rural sociology in a broad sense is that branch of sociology which deals with rural social life. It is the scientific study of rural groups, rural social relations, or more precisely, the rural world. Many sociologists have tried to define rural sociology. Some of them are the following. Some of them told rural social organization is the study of social processes operating in rural society. If we analyze this definition of Champit, we will find that Champin has pointed out three important things in his definition. Here you will see that rural social organization in which attention is paid to a structural and functional side of the village. Here Champion also define about two aspects of rural sociology, structure and function. And second point is rural population, in which the population aspect of village, gender ratio, density and population distribution is studied. And third is social processes. First one is rural social organization, that is the structure and function, and second one is rural population, density of population, and third one is social process, in which the major organizational and disruptive social processes found in rural population are studied, such as cooperation, trust, adaptation, competition, conflict. Sanderson defines it is rural sociology and social modernization, writing that rural sociology is the sociology of life found in rural environment. It is clear from this definition, Dr. Sanderson, that the scientific study of the rural environment or the social life of people living in the village is called rural sociology. It is written that approach displays this book emphasized that the whole of sociology is a unity. Its basic fact and principle should generally be used carefully within the stated safe limit, which should not be forgotten. Some researchers studies those events and processes which are mostly inherent in the rural environment, or are confined only to those individuals who are engaged in agri-businesses. Such sociologist fact can be made everybody in the form of theory, rural sociology, which are cited from the study of rural social relationship. A.R. Desai, in his most important and prestigious work, Rural Sociology in India, has clarified the nature of rural sociology on the basis of its objective. Without presenting any one universal definition of rural sociology, Grape writes the main objective of rural sociology is to make scientific, systematic, and detailed study of its structure, function, and objective tendencies of development, and on the basis of systematic study. Here I would like to tell you one thing. There is someone has written in rural sociology that the subject matter for rural sociology is the analysis of animal population as they occur in the rural environment, human being. It is written the rural sociology can be defined as a scientific study which studies rural human beings in the context of those groups. In other words, we can say that rural sociology is of rural social life. Sociology is even more clearly we can present in advanced point. Just look these points. Rural sociology is a branch of sociology. Rural sociology studies the people living in the rural environment. Rural sociology is mainly concerned with rural social organization, its structure, function, and social pattern and processes. In a way, rural sociology is concerned with the study of all aspects of rural life. Rural sociology is more practical than sociology because it is related to the practical life of rural community. Origin and development of rural, so the study of rural society is a story of human civilization. Many ancient scholars have also studied rural societies, but they cannot be placed under the review of any specific science under the influence of scientific basis. In the first part of the work, a systematic source book in rural sociology, edited by Peter Sorokin and Zimmerman and Galpin, the study of rural societies done by various scholars has been presented, but these studies are called rural sociology cannot be named. As a result of this, the attention of various sociologists began to be drawn toward rural communities, and various aspects of rural communities were studied on a large scale. Rural sociology first originated in United States of America as a systematic science. From 1876, the study of rural sociology started in American universities. In fact, the period from 1890 to 1920 was a time of crisis for the rural society of America. This entire period is known as the Age of Exploitation. At this time, many problems had arisen in American rural society, from which it was necessary to get rid of. The price of land had increased to the extreme. Technological civilization had become painful. The ownership of the peasant was being lost, and the influence of religion and church, etc. The process of urbanization was getting stronger. Sims wrote in Element of Rural Sociology that the whole period was a period of decline of rural societies. Inspired by these circumstances, the attention of many social scientists began to be attracted toward these rural problems, and a comprehensive study of rural society and its problem was started in Chicago, Michigan, Columbia, and many other universities. This effort of these sociologists became the foundation stone for the development of rural sociology. The real origin of rural sociology dates back to the beginning of the 20th century. In 1908, the President of America, Roosevelt, appointed Rural Life Commission under the chairmanship of Dean Bailey. This commission did field research work to study the various problems of rural life. And just see this, and just we have to point some basic information regarding rural sociology. Field of study of rural sociology, subject matter of rural sociology we will discuss here. After the great development of rural sociology in all the countries, this question has become very important, that what should be the field of study of rural sociology? That is, what are those subjects which the with which the study of rural sociology should relate itself. There is a difference of opinion among sociologists regarding the area and subject matter of rural sociology. Scholars have different perspectives about its subject area on many questions, such as rural sociology should be accepted as a branch of sociology or it should be given the status of a separate science. Rural sociology should confine Rural sociology should confine its study scope to rural studies or it should extend to the comparative study of rural and urban life, their mutual relations and effect on each other and such other studies. Rural sociology should maintain the status of a pure science or it may also attain the status of an applied science. In rural sociology, only related picture of rural society should be presented by being objective or contribution should be made in the form of a thinking plan to reconstruct rural life. These are the same of the questions on which there has been a difference of opinion among rural sociologists for a long time. But in spite of this, there are many such questions on which all sociologists are of the same opinion. Almost all sociologists have a unanimous opinion on the following question. All sociologists agree that the basic objective of rural sociology is to make a scientific, systematic and comprehensive study of the rural social system, its structure, function and trend of development. On the basis of these studies, rural sociology should formulate rules and principles about rural social life. All sociologists also agree that both rural and urban are two important aspects of social life. These two sides also interact with each other. All sociologists agree on this point. I accept the characteristics of rural social life and urban social life are different, so both these social lives should also be studied separately. We will mention here in the detail of field of study of rural sociology presented by some sociologists. Smith, in his work The Sociology of Rural Life, has explained the study area of rural sociology by dividing into three parts: population and rural social organization and institutional relationship of land business, social morphology and major social institution. And third point is social process. Actually, he mentioned about population, rural social organization and social process. In his work Social Structure in Rural Sociology by Stuart Chapin, 3 points included by Smith, namely population, rural social organization, social process, have been included in the study area of rural sociology. And Nelson classification is more important in this direction. Nelson, in her article Rural Sociology Dimension and Horizon, has mentioned the field of study of rural sociology. Propagation has clarified this study area by dividing it into 3 dimensions or 3 classes. A study of the relation of rural sentiments. Second one is comprehensive study related to time perspective. And third point is depth of study. A.R. Desai has clarified the field of study of rural sociology in a broader perspective, indirectly supporting Nelson's view. According to him, the study area of Samoa sociology include the study of rural social organization, social structure, trends of development and law of development. A study of rural, actually now we will see about Smith, Pin and Nelson. Desai have presented different idea about the village. The views of these sociologists determine the general direction about rural sociology. In order to clarify the dissemination of this subject, it is necessary that we can include the following subject in the study area of rural sociology. So we should look some characteristic in point wise. A study of rural community. Rural sociology include a study of rural community, and second point, a study of rural social structure. A study of rural social organization, that is structure and function, both. A study of rural social groups and subgroups, and a study of rural social processes. Various organizational and disruptive social processes means conflict, assimilation, cooperation, integration, adjustment, competition are also there. A study of rural social problem means land problem, means poverty, many problems. And a study of rural population, a study of rural change, rural social change due to urbanization and westernization, modernization, globalization. There are changes in rural social life. A study of rural social institution, a study of rural economic institution. Economic institution, although rural sociology does not study official institution, this work is of economic, but in its broadest form, the impact of farmer relation, agriculture and other occupation on rural life. A study of rural political institution, Panchayati Raj, a study of rural urban relationship. Zimmerman wrote the field of rural sociology, as one may take for its centralized notion is the effect of urbanization and ruralization on population and mechanization. A study of rural reconstruction. At present, most of the rural sociologists are in favor that the field of a study of rural sociology should not be limited to the theoretical study of rural life, but it should include various programs related to rural construction. These are the area or a scope of subject matter of rural sociology. Now we will discuss about nature of rural sociology. Before narrating the scope of rural sociology, the question arises whether its content is scientific or not. On the basis, we can examine the nature of rural sociology. In order to obtain knowledge related to a particular subject, when we collect fact by scientific method, then such a study is called scientific study. Therefore, the basis of science is the scientific method, not the content. Therefore, before understanding the nature of rural sociology, it becomes necessary that we understand the meaning of scientific method properly. According to Lundberg, the scientific method involves systematic observation, classification, interpretation of fact. On the various stages of scientific method, Bernard writes that science can be defined by the main processes found under it. These are based on testing, verification, definition, classification, organization and guidance, which also include pointing to the future and putting them into the practice. Following are different stages of scientific method: construction of a topical, and second point, selection of instrument or tools of the questionnaire. Third one is fact observation and fact compilation. Fourth is to record, and fifth is classification, and sixth is generalization. In the view August Comte, first one is observation, experimentation and comparison. And we can say in conclusion that in the rural sociology we can study scientifically, and we can observe, experiment as well as classify. Rural sociology as a science. From a scientific point of view, the following steps should be taken in the study of rural sociology: truthfulness of the nature of knowledge, its organization, its method, theory of formulation. As it is clear from the following description that rural sociology verifies all these four conditions. So, reliable knowledge is the first condition, and organization of knowledge, and sociology as a method, and it also necessary in science. However, the observation of physics are based on experiments and observation of sociology. The description and analysis what is rural sociology also studies the what is or should be. On the other side of such terms, we should study what is there, not should study what should be there in rural social life. And formation of theories. And now we are going to discuss importance of rural sociology. We just we will discuss the point of important point related to the topic, because video will be very big. So rural sociology studied rural society. Most of the world population is still settled in village. Therefore, the study of rural society is very important for us even in this age. Human society has been rural for thousands of years. Urban life has developed only for a few centuries. In fact, if seen, urban life is the beginning of a modern life. It is clear from this that all sociology so far is in a way a sociology of rural life. Nelson wrote, the story of a man from a very short time ago is mostly the story of a rural man. Not only this, because the present era or most of the human beings have been living in a small village in all parts of the world, even in this time. Some of the big cities which have been built also have rural areas. Life itself was visible. Characteristics of civilian life were not developed in them. The whole life of the society was rural life. In fact, there is no development of urban life and most of their life remain rural. Take for example the cities of Yoruba in Africa. Similarly, take Alexandria and other cities in the Middle East. Anderson also wrote in this subject that Baghdad or Tehran do not exhibit any urban life. Importance of rural sociology in India. The importance of rural sociology in India can be presented by these points. Village is the original source of Indian culture. Some special studies possible in Indian village. Most of the population of India is rural. Most of the population of India is rural. Even at present, 70% of the population in India is rural. That is why this country is called agricultural. Indian sociologist is rural sociology. India is an agricultural country. Whatever sociological studies we have done in India are in a way related to rural sociology. View of life and poverty. There is the rural society of India present the scene of poverty and under poverty in Indian village. And it is clear from the views of the above scholars that rural India is a state. In rural India is in a state of extreme poverty. We can understand the situation of the whole of India because at 20% of India, 82% of India is settled in about 70% of Indian, this data is so old, 70% of Indian people resides in village. To handle this situation, we need rural sociology is extremely needed. Rural sociology is not a part of urban society. We have clarified that rural society is not a part of urban society. Rural life itself has its own problem. Rapidly changing rural society. Indian rural society is bleeding at a rapid pace. As a result of these changes, the rural society has changed so much that its ancient form has almost ended. In the context of rural reconstructions, the Indian Union has mentioned in its constitution itself. The following paragraph of the directive principle of a state policy is important. India is an agricultural country. The village here are the basic sources and the foundation stone of Indian culture. In such a situation if we say that India is a country of village, then it will not be an exaggeration. Such a large population solves the problem, and it can be imagined how important the science doing this work will happen. Rural sociologist Professor Desai has written that the rise and importance of rural sociology in India is a period of time. Our India from ancient time was divided into self-dependent rural units. This feature was naturally present in India. The foreign rule broke this beautiful system, the best quality of self-builder due to the influence of foreign rule, foreign civilization and culture. This zamindari system allowed the blood of the rural body to remain rise due to the fall in the primary condition of village. The social, cultural, religious and spiritual condition also disappeared and started singing at a low level or even vanishing and getting at a low level. Rural India was surrounded by demons like illiteracy, hunger, unemployment, debt, drinking, litigation. In such circumstances, rural sociology was the only science whose rays of the light could be reached to the empty masses. In this regard, Professor Desai has also written the systematic study of rural social organization, and its structure and function and evaluation has become necessary not only after independence but also of opinion. In this way, in order to reorganize the disintegrated form of our rural structure and make it self-reliant, scientific study of the problem is very necessary. In view of India being a village-headed country, it is mandatory for every citizen to have knowledge of this scripture. Indian Planning Department, every officer engaged in the work of Indian planning, in particular every member of Planning Commission, must have knowledge of rural sociology. Most of the 5-year plan being made for the upliftment of rural India are implemented in the village. Community development programs, Indian community development program are directly related to village. This is very effective revolution in rural development. Panchayat Department of India, organization of Panchayat and Panchayat Samiti and Zilla Parishad is being done under democratic decentralization in India. The objective of this program is also to reorganize rural life. The zamindari system allowed, and now we will discuss about the next topic, that is rural and urban community. India is a country of village. Even today, most of the population lives in village. Village is called a place where people live for a long period of time to fulfill their necessity of life. And we have to see the differences between rural and urban life. Meaning of village. Some scholars have tried to define village on the basis of total population and density of population. Generally, the place where 3,000 or less people reside is called village, but there are some villages in India whose population is more than 5,000. There are some villages which not only depends on agriculture but also earn their livelihood through their industries and other occupation. M.N. Srivastava has written, while expressing his view, a rural area is one where people are engaged in agriculture industry, that is, they do the primary production of goods with the help of nature. Landis said that world rural must have 3 things: direct dependence on nature, limited size, close and primary relationship. But Rand has discussed 2 grounds of rural: income or low density of population. In fact, there is no definite boundary line which separates the village from the city. In relation to this, McIver has written while clarifying his view that there is no such clear boundary line of division between between town and village, on the basis of which it can be told where the village ends and from where the city begins. The word rural urban do not only explain the geographical location but also the type of community life. We can say this theory is rural urban continuum, from where rural area start, from where urban area end, or from where rural area end. No one can define it. There is less division of labor and most of the people are associated with agriculture and simple industries. Merrill and Eldridge. According to Merrill and Eldridge, rural community consists of institutions and individuals who are organized around a small center and participate in common natural interests. Now we will see the characteristic of rural communities. Characteristic of rural community, first is primary relationship, and the second one is a small in size. Rural area is a small in size. Rural community is a small, that is, there is no excess of population in them. Low population density. The size of the rural community is not small, but the density of population is also low. Both is low. Density is also low and population is also low. Agriculture is the main occupation and nature-based living. And lack of division of labor and specialization. There is less division of labor in the rural community. They have knowledge of almost all the work related to their life. And importance of religion. The importance of religion is more important in rural community. Tradition and primacy. Importance of tradition and customs and folkways. In rural areas, the people here are unable to easily disregard the traditional belief, custom in the village. And illiteracy and fatalism. Even today, the outbreak of illiteracy and fatalism is clearly visible in the rural community. And lack of mobility is found in rural community. And homogeneity. There is homogeneity among people in rural community. And celebrate religion, business, custom, ideals, ethics and festival. Importance of public opinion. Public opinion is more important in the rural community due to the small size of community. Joint family system. The joint family system is especially known in India. Many generations of people live together in this type of family. And Jajmani system. Jajmani system is a wonderful feature of the Indian rural community. A unique relationship is found between different castes through this practice. Gram Panchayat has been a very ancient feature of Indian rural community. Low status of women. The status of women in the Indian rural community is low. There is lack of education among women. And these are the characteristics of rural society. Now we will discuss about urban society and city. Generally, city is called that whose population is more and more than 1 lakh. The size of such a community is usually large. Under this, people lead a changeable life in relation to this. But said that cities are those places which are relatively large, dense, and there are socially heterogeneous people living there. 3 characteristics of the city are clear from Buss's ideas: more population, high density, and heterogeneity. According to Kingsley Davis, the city is inhabited by people of more social differences. There is also an abundance of occupation. He also told that in the city, secondary relatives have primacy. Not all people know each other through direct relationship. Davis clarified his view and said that the density of population cannot be considered as the only important factor in the determining the city. And according to Wilcox, city means an area where the density of population per square mile is more than 1000 person and where agriculture is not done. And Hoslitz consider an urban community as a unit where cheap and skilled labor is found. And now we will discuss about the feature of urban community or characteristics of urban community. Large in population, there is an excess of population. And heterogeneity, where in the rural city there are rural society, there is homogeneity, here is heterogeneity, different occupation. In rural area only agriculture based occupation, and division of labor and specialization is available, but in rural area division of labor and specialization is very limited. And individualism and competition, in rural area there is no individualism and competition, lack of individualism. And secondary relationship, in rural society there is primary relationship. And Louis Mumford told that in the urban community formality, pretensions, interest based relation and formal rules prevail. Mobility, there is high mobility in urban area but low mobility in rural area. Decrease in the importance of religion in rural area, but there is importance of religion in rural area, and lack of importance in urban area, importance of religion. Logical approach, urban people are very logical, but there are also logical in rural area, but there are belief and religious system and tradition and customs are more highly pressurized in rural area. Local segregation in urban area, and in these places low income people have bungalows of high income and prestigious people in the outer area of the society where they reside. Formal social control is found in urban area, and in rural area informal social control is found. Higher status of women, the status of women in the urban community is good. And social problems, various type of social problems keep arising in the urban community, that is to say the city is the center of social problems. Slums, slum is major feature of urban community that is not found in rural area. Slum settlement often develop in cities. Comparison between rural and urban community. Rural and urban community are different in principle, but in practice they are so mixed that it seems difficult to point out their solution. There is hardly any community that is completely rural or urban. The reason for this is that many elements of the Indian urban community are found in the rural community, and many features of the rural community are also found in the urban community. From cultural point of view, also business, superstition, exorcist and rural dress are seen in the cities on one hand, and other hand urban clothes, food, language and individualism etc. are seen in the village. In fact, the situation of rural-urban continuity, this situation is called rural-urban continuity, which I have discussed earlier, which is called rural-urban continuum. That is, the characteristics of cities are found in village and sign of village are visible in cities too. These two are not opposite communities but also separate fringes of a continuum. McIver Page in their book Society, Rural Urban Community, Urban Community in Comparison, three difficulties are discussed. Rural urban difference is a matter of degree. In fact, there is only language differences between village and town. No clear line of distinction can be drawn between them. McIver and Page have written this context, but there is not such clear differences between the two that it can be told where the city ends and where the village begins. There is no fixed direction. The main fold of environment within the city, one of the difficulties in the comparing the rural and urban community is that different environments are found in the city. Different characteristics are found in different places. People belonging to different caste, race, language, religion, sect, class and occupation are found in the cities. As a result, different environment arises in the city. Changing character of city and village. The rural and urban communities are not of permanent character but are of changing nature. The process of urbanization and industrialization, the culture, ethics, behavior and business of the cities have influenced and changed the village adjoining the city. On difference between rural and urban community. Different sociologists have discussed different based of difference between rural and urban community. Let us first discuss the difference. Point out Sorokin and Zimmerman has been discussed the differences between rural and urban community on the basis of occupation, environmental basis, on the basis of environment, and size of community, on the basis of size of community, density of population, on the basis of density of population. To say the density is relatively high, it means that per square kilometer area in the village people live less in the village than in the cities. Homogeneity and heterogeneity. Rurals are homogeneous and urbans are heterogeneous in population on the basis of social differentiation and stratification. And mobility, on the basis of mobility. Rurals are less mobility. Rurals have, in rural area there are less mobility and in urban area mobility is fast. Arrangement of interaction, on the basis of interaction. And Sri Desai, A.R. Desai also discussed 9 bases of difference between rural and urban community. Business distinction, environmental differences, size differences of community, population density distinction, homogeneity and heterogeneity, social mobility differences, distinction related to the direction of migration, social differentiation and stratification, and differences in the method of social interaction. Richard D. Webb has clarified the difference between urban and rural community on the 5 grounds: status unknown, work division, social and economic differences, impersonal and formal social relation, desire and effort to get independent position in personal background. Apart from the view of above scholars, the difference between rural and urban community can be clarified in the following way. Contrast on the basis of environment and anonymity, one for all for one, and contrast on the basis of social stratification. Differences are found in the basis of social stratification in urban community. Contrast on the basis of economic life, and contrast on the basis of population, which earlier I have mentioned. Contrast on the basis of social relations, contrast on the basis of cultural life, and contrast on the basis of social control, and contrast on the basis of social mobility. These points you remember and discuss and write more and more. Your concept will be clear. There is a difference between village and urban life, but both are not at all different from each other. They are inextricably linked with each other. In fact, they seem to be two different forms of the same social system. Neither the village is fully self-supporting nor the city. It is practically not possible to find a complete city or village anywhere. Social change in rural India. Social change in village life. A.R. Desai identified 4 trends for the rural transformation. The transformation of the agrarian society from traditional substance based on society to market based profit oriented society with the use of modern urban technology from a scattered, loosely developed agriculture system to the national attempt to integrate into the economy as a whole. It is going through a period of transformation and formation. Its technologies base, economic structure, social institution, a structure which has been based on caste system and joint family. The most important role has been played by the state in them Some such important factors can be calculated on the following basis. Attempt to cripple or eradicate certain section of the agricultural society and emergence of various society and institutions influenced by a closely related to urban influence in agricultural society. Along with these, the changing economic and political equation of the newly emerging peasant classes are also visible, which have important socio-economic political implication. The most important step taken by the state is adult suffrage. This single factor created a wave of change and made rural India socially and politically influential. Impact of education and mass media. The medium of education mass communication brought important changes in the social system of rural India and took it forward on the path of modernization. In the atmosphere of widespread illiteracy, folk song, folk dance, puppet, etc. continue to be used as medium of education and formation, but after the advent of technology changes. Many new ideas for exchange and dissemination of information, communication, entertainment ideas. And green revolution and social consequences. The important parameter of the country's progress set after independence on that scale, the major agricultural revolution or the green revolution itself. When the country itself was starved of hunger and food storage in 1984, in the drought affected area of sub-Saharan Africa, it was a proud moment for India when it was announced to send 1 lakh tons of food grain for the purpose of providing relief. The whole world appreciated it with admiration. It was also important because a short time ago the position of India was more or less to spread its hand in the field of food production. All this was possible due to the positive thinking and policies of the government, from the working farmer of the country, from the agricultural scientists working day and night to lead the country in the path of development, from the workers and laborers engaged in the development, and most importantly from the determination power of the country, which created the strength to get the country from a food deficit important country to a rich food producing exporting country. Although achieving this goal is important, but at the same time the objective of making the country at par with developed country in the consumption of food, fat, sugar, vegetables and other food items was also in front. The green revolution in a new era in agriculture relation, while on the one hand production increased on large agriculture holding, on the other hand economic inequality also increased between a smallholder farmer, agricultural laborers and large farmer. In many areas of the country there was an increase in the number of present proletariat. The Bhumihin began to organize, and in response to this Bhumihan bars organization also organized themselves. Due to this, the migration of landless farmer and laborers to land rich high productivity area also started on a large scale. Migration of agricultural labor from Bihar and eastern Uttar Pradesh etc. to Punjab and Haryana can be placed under this category. As a result of green revolution, some new sovereign caste came into existence on a very large scale. This happened especially in the mid-level backward caste. With improvement agriculture, they now came up a lot due to their prosperity in the local caste system. Sociologists and social anthropologists believe that the socially backward caste benefited more from land reform in the changing environment as a result of green revolution. The traditional landless scheduled caste could not take much benefit from these. These backward castes were more intelligent and strong farmers. So when it came time to increase the yield with the use of land reforms and scientific technology, they took full advantage of this opportunity. They were already numerically powerful lacking only the status equal to that of upper caste in the social system, which they were gradually improving through Sanskritization. Jat of Punjab, Haryana, and Western Uttar Pradesh, Ahir, Kumir, Kurmis, Gujjar of Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Marathas and of Maharashtra, Patel and Patidar of Gujarat, Kamar and Reddy of Andhra Pradesh, Lingayat and Vakkalinga of Karnataka, and some of other farmer castes are an example of this category. These castes going toward grading were completely successful in taking advantage of green revolution. Through cash crop and commercial farming, not only did these groups acquire movable and immovable property in rural area, but they also made substantial gain in terms of property in the surrounding urban area. Green revolution played an important role in the changing social environment in different parts of the country. Under the Green Revolution, new technology, economic exchange, institutional finance, use of advanced seeds and plants, little English knowledge, a modern thinking, etc. were many such reasons which pushed the old generation back a bit. Due to this new thinking of new generation and better and stronger participation, decision making and process came to the forward. Due to the Green Revolution, new market forced emerged for the sale of the cash crop, due to which the old Yajmani system was greatly affected. The relation between the traditional Yajmani and working class changed greatly. Land reform and its social consequences. Now we will discuss about land reforms and social consequences. Green Revolution land reform is very important for the IAS, PCS as well as competitive point of view and academic point of view. Land reform refers the redistribution of surplus land decided on the ceiling on cultivable holding for small farmers and landless. It was taken view of the workers from a broader perspective. Land reform meant not only the redistribution of land but also the development of institutions related to land, reform and farming. Under this, loan cooperative for tenancy, farming, education related to farming, marketing and advisory services were also included. By Gunnar Middle in his book Asian Drama, it is stated land reform is a planned and institutional reorganization between the individual and the land. No reorganization of land ownership and tenancy can be successful unless it is planned for policy. Should not be made. Looking at the land reform in social and economic context, there is also a need for mechanization in it. Since the Congress government after independence was committed to bring about a structural change in the field of agriculture, therefore a committee was formed under the chairmanship of Jawaharlal Nehru, whose recommendations were implemented in the reform program in the field of agriculture. Some of the main recommendations were as follows. All the middlemen between the state and the cultivator should be removed by the removing all the brokers and middlemen. There should be a concept of cooperative in their place which has no interest of its own in the middle. Land should be developed as a source of employment, and acquisition of land beyond this maximum limit through village cooperative, it should be done. Small holdings should be increased as well as their further shortening should be stopped. When the plan program were carried out according to the suggestion of planning commission, many suggestions were given by the commission to different states. Improvement in land tenure, land ceiling, elimination of middlemen, consolidation of holdings, maintaining systematic record of land. In his important study related to land, P.C. Joshi said that instead of the interest of agricultural farmers, land reform programs are often working for the interest of land pressure group. As a result of land reform, such group in the village area is big land owner, rich peasant and tenant, big Above all interest of those landlords who have grouped the land under their home, farm or individual farming, evicted tenants from their land. This has happened different ways in different states. Rich peasants with tenants with whom they live really big and they are also financially prosperous. Inferior tenants. This is the group of most affected farmers with a small holding. Despite land reform, there has been no significant difference in their condition. There is no difference in their position in the right of tenancy on the land and in the profit on it. Voluntary tenants at will. Tenant at will and agricultural labor. At the bottom of this category, voluntary tenants are agricultural labor who share in agriculture produce, who have no right to the land, while the land is actually cultivated only where the population density is what is more. They work on their own small holding as well as on the land of others, but without any benefit or security. Yogen Singh, after studying land reforms and Panchayati Raj program in some area of caste, eastern Uttar Pradesh, but some aspect of the current rural power equation, upper caste such as Thakur, Brahmin, Bhumihar, former landlords and the class of money lenders still have power. The struggle for power has started organizing the lower caste and groups as well. At the caste level now, these groups are also becoming participants in power. The village political system is still completely affected by the economic constraint and prosperity of different caste groups. The power balance of the power equation seems to be in favor of group which is financially strong in the village. K.L. Sharma has presented two directions of social mobility in his study of 6 villages of Rajasthan. Not only the agricultural laborers but also some old landlords have come down in class status. The newly emerged rich farming class is now emerging as a bourgeoisie class in place of the old landlords. Kotovsky has also drawn attention to the increasing proletarianization among the village peasants. This is also evident from a study conducted between 1961 to 81. The share of farmers declined from 52% to 41%, while that agricultural labor increased from 17.2 to 25% new dominance due to Green Revolution and land reform. The rise of class has also taken place. Rise of new sovereign race, emerging of new dominant caste. In order to understand the process of social change in Indian agriculture society, it is necessary to understand about the dominant caste of landowners in rural India. Despite rapid industrialization, land ownership is still of basis of wealth, prestige and political power. Srinivas first mentioned the concept of dominant caste in the article Dominant Caste of Rampur Village, published in 1959 issue of American Ecologist. This out of the box dissertation presented a new insight about the process of changes taking place in Indian society. Since this, then many sociologists and social anthropologists have taken up the task of studying the various aspects of sovereignty in rural India. Srinivas has told that in order to be sovereign, it is necessary to have the he should have considerable amount of cultivable land in his possession. The number of people of that caste should be quite large. He should get some high and prestigious among the local areas. Land ownership has traditionally been confined to a small number of castes. And apart from this, the Green Revolution also raised the importance of cultivable land, as a result of which the attention of some traditional trading caste toward land ownership was also attracted and they started buying land to become more and more landowner. Being more in number or prestigious does not make it sovereign. For that, it is also necessary to have some new element like Western education, appointments of people of that caste in local administration and political power. This is the reason that some castes which were previously sovereign no longer remain so. Adult and now, due to the vast expansion of communication and transport, the dominance of the village level is not enough to make a caste sovereign. Rather, it is more important to have regional sovereignty to be sovereign. This social situation can also be understood in another way. A particular caste may dominate its village in terms of number of members, economic status, and political influence. But if it is surrounded by holistic and angry caste from all sides in the village, then the village level dominance of that caste has no effect on prosperity. And taking advantage of many government and non-government schemes, many relatively lower castes adopted this profession on a large scale and in a very short time accumulated a lot of money and property, which also increased their political power. The example of Jatwa community of Agra can be given here, which American anthropologist on Lynch has also done a great study in his book The Politics of Untouchability. It is another thing that the occupation corrupted by the ritualistic approach are no longer out of reach of many upper caste, and due to the forces of social liberalism and market in the last 4 or 5 decades. And these are the facts related to rural society. Those belonging to Lord race are hesitant to go through the entire curvature and accept the existence of Lord. The fundamental point of Srinivas here is that both the Prabhu group dominant caste place their sovereignty in the fact that they are part of the same race. I think most of the part have been discussed by Green Revolution as well as land reform. In the frightening competition to control, all the members of the Lord caste do not personally get the power directly, but collectively they definitely get the power and also implement and use it. Thus the political process and economic development both at the microscopic and secondary meso level seem to be clearly bearing the seal of the sovereign caste concerned. And impact of now, so I think if you will look this and you will read carefully and you will listen carefully, you could understand about the Green Revolution as well as land reform system and nature of rural society and many institutions. If you are going to write any kind of question, it is interrelated with multi terms and multi-functional institution, multi-words you have to use. So you have to think multi-dimensional, multi-aspected. Then you can write answer in a appropriate manner. Thank you. Scheme for rural reconstruction in India. In view of its importance, some effort were started even before independence. A state agricultural commission was established in the year 1926 to study the rural problems and reconstruction effort during the British rule. After this, many schemes were prepared for rural reconstruction in Uttar Pradesh, Punjab and Bombay also. Even before independence, some limited effort were made for the economic development of the rural community on the basis of cooperative. Even after this, it is true that Practically no important work could be done in the field of rural reconstruction before independence. Immediately after the independence of India, a planning commission was constituted for the coordinated development of the country, and from the year 1951 by implementing various development programs through 5-year plans. The highest priority was given to rural development. The effort made for rural development in the 5-year plan can be mainly divided into two parts: the effort made at the government level and the scheme implemented at the non-government level. In the first category, we include many important programs like land reform, cooperative movement, community development program, Panchayati Raj system, Antyodaya work for grain scheme and integrated rural development program, Sarvodaya, Bhudan, Gramdan are those important programs that started at the non-government level. Although later on many administrative facilities were provided by the government for the success of this scheme. It is only through all these development plans that the true nature of rural development can be understood. In the present chapter, we will discuss only programs like land reform, cooperative, Sarvodaya land donation, adult education 20-point program, rural employment program, integrated rural development IRDP program, etc. community development program, and Panchayati Raj system are discussed. Zamindari evolution and land reform. This is very important chapter. Before independence in India, the farmers did not have any legal right on the land. At that time, the British government had made a permanent settlement of land, under which in most of the country the entire land of a village was under the control of zamindar. The zamindar collected rent from each farmer and deposit a fixed part of in it government treasury. This practice was called Rayatwari system in some part of the country. Malwari system was also prevalent, under which it was the common responsibility of the whole village to deposit the rent of the entire village land in the government treasury. As a result, the life of the peasant was not only highly exploited and poor, but the peasants were also very indifferent. All matter or content have been discussed previously about land reform. After independence between 1950 and 1951, different states made their own laws and abolished the zamindari system. At this time, it was arranged that the farmers who have been cultivating on the same land for many generations, they should pay 10 times the rent of 1 year. You can get permanent ownership of that land by deposit it with the government. Such farmers were called bhumidar. If a farmer is cultivating any land for 5 years before the abolition of zamindari, they, by depositing 15 times the rent of 1 year, he was also given the facility of becoming a bhumidar, means owner of bhumi. In addition, it was felt that highly fragmented agriculture holding hindered the development of scientific method of farming and substantial capital investment in it. Thus, consolidation of holding was accepted as an important measure to make agriculture economical and increase its efficiency. Through consolidation program, the work of giving a combined block of land to the farmer in the place of a small pieces of land was started. Even after this land reform, it was realized that the hundred of acres of land have been accumulated with some landowners, whereas there were lakhs of farmers who either had less than 1 acre of land or were working as landless farmer. To improve this situation, different states have fixed the maximum limit of holding by making separate laws. Although such laws could not be passed in all the state, but in some state. Daniel Thorner, in his book Agrarian Prospect in India, has clarified that this situation is a clear manifestation of the caste hierarchy of the traditional Indian society and the value associated with it. Even due to administrative efficiency and apathy, the common villager could not get much benefit from the land reform effort. This is the reason that the government is now considering such a comprehensive policy for land reform, through which more facilities of cultivable land can be provided to the small farmers and landless laborers who are being exploited by the big landowners. Cooperation movement is also very important for rural development and barrier. Now we will talk about barriers to rural social change. We will point out only in brief. In every society where many conditions encourage change, some such opposing forces or obstacles are also active which keep creating obstacles in change. We call these barriers barrier of change. The process of change in a society cannot be understood unless these barriers are understood. One of the main points in this regard is that the barriers to change are not of the same nature in all societies. They are related to a large extent with socio-cultural values and at different level of economic development. Due to these conditions being different in different societies, the barrier to the change there may also be different from each other. That many factors are responsible for creating hindrance in rural social change. It is true that a particular factor may appear to be more effective in a particular situation or period, but each factor can prove to be an effective barrier to change only in the proximity of the other. That is what should be seen. The second fact is that the effect of the factors obstructing the path of various changes can also be different from each other. From this point of view, the various factors responsible for the inhibition of change can be assessed realistically only by looking at the micro level and macro level. The second fact is that any barrier to change is not a permanent feature of any society, but due to change in circumstances, the nature of these barriers also varies. It is possible that in the early stage of development, the traditions and religious beliefs of the society hinder the change, whereas after the economic development of the society, various types of technology increase interest start hindering the change. The barrier to change may be different from each other even in industrialized and agricultural countries. From this point of view, it is necessary to try to understand the nature of all barriers to change which operate differently in different rural society. Among these barriers, social, culture and psychological barriers are the most important. Now we look the point, class conflict. The greater the possibility of class conflict in society, more obstacles arise in the way of change. Class division gives rise to such class consciousness under which a person does not see any change, keeping in mind the interest of the whole society or community. Ascribed statuses. The social barrier to rural change is also the social structure based on ascribed status. And interest-oriented leadership. In the present era, leadership is not only a major medium of change, but the nature of leadership also affects the acceptance or rejection of social change. And it has been written that interest-oriented leadership shuts down the mind of the people, makes their conscience loose and tries to prove the usefulness of those modes of behavior approved by tradition. Social isolation is an important element of rural change. This is a physical barrier. If a community is very small in size, lead a separate life from the rest of the society due to lack of facility of change and communication, it gets very few opportunity to come in contact with other communities. Higher dependence on the group is also a reason to obstacle for rural social change. And Family, familism. Familism is a condition in which the welfare of the family is given utmost importance by considering the interest of individual members as secondary. Sorokin, Zimmerman, and Galpin have written the familiarity is a condition in which all social institutions and basic social relations are built according to family characteristics, and according to them, individual activities are determined. Generally, in the family system of traditional societies, the head has so much authority that it is very difficult to adopt any new way of behavior without his permission. Dominance of factions and institutional values are the barrier of social change. Traditionalism is also a barrier of social change. And ethnocentrism, this is a feeling under which a person believes that his religion, race, culture and belief are superior to all other human beings. This is also barrier for development. Tendency of other worldliness is such a cultural tendency according to which everything in the physical world is tried to be connected with the transcendental world. As a result of the tendency toward altruism, not only does the motivation to invent and do any work with confidence disappear, but we also start to see the observance of traditions as the only duty. Cultural conflict is also a barrier for rural life, and antagonistic propaganda is also a barrier of rural life. Now, conservative morality refers to the totality of all those rules that give a sense of right and wrong. Conservative morality is also a barrier of rural development. As a result, these obstacles were created in the way of many such changes, with the help of which the condition of women could be greatly improved. Similarly, many useful changes could not be achieved in the field of nutrition, food and use of fertilizers as a result of orthodox morality. And religious belief is also a barrier of rural social change. One-sided prejudice is also a common character, and prejudice is also one-sided prejudice is also a barrier of rural social change. Prejudices and anti-change mentality is also a factor for rural social, not barrier of rural social change. Ignorance and Cold War, and when the development of agriculture started very fast in some countries of Asia, some countries exporting food grains to these countries started spreading such misleading propaganda. Delayed result. Every person tries to see the result of a new behavior or action as soon as possible. This is also a barrier. Low patience, lower level of ambitions, and vested interest. Barrier determined by bureaucratic interests. Barrier determined by economic interests. Barrier determined by cultural interest. These are the barriers of rural development transformation. Already we have discussed this, and we will discuss direction of change in rural society. Like all other events, the rural community has been undergoing continuous change since the time of its existence. The truth is that the technology, economy, social institution, art, religion, literature, ideology, etc. of the rural community are all going through a series of changes. After the independence of the country, the sequence of change in the rural community has become quite rapid. In the present time, many important changes have arisen in the rural community life due to circumstances like industrialization, urbanization, a spread of scientific temper, development of means of education, communication. These changes were discussed in detail by Dr. A.R. Desai, Dr. D.N. Majumdar, Dr. Gadgil, have been done by sociologists in their respective work. The changes taking place in the Indian rural community can be briefly understood. Now, I would like to tell you the factors which is responsible for changes, that is urbanization, industrialization, modernization, and multinational companies, globalization, individualism and individual competition are increasing in place of collectivism, origin of individual ownership. Now the market system is developing due to the effect of mechanization with the destruction of cottage industries. Family power is declining and the joint family is being replaced by small families. Change in and migration. Now we will discuss a bit about migration. Migration means the process of moving from one geographical area to another, either permanently or temporarily. The element of permanence exists in the state of migration, from one country to another by migration, traveling from one place to another, from village to society, village to city, or from village to village in India. The process of migration has been very rapid in India in the last few years. Due to many reasons, the population moves from village to cities. In real terms, in developing countries where 3 by 4 of the world's population lives, there has been more migration from village to cities, and migration continues even further. The population of cities has increased rapidly in the last few years. Due to this, number of cities has also increased. The most urbanized state of India is no more Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, but the urban population is found between about 40 to 55. On the other hand, about 20-25% of population lives in the city in Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan. The overall percentage of India's urbanization in 2001 has been 27.75%. Looking at the above data, it is clear that the population of other cities is increasing and its population is increasing. Then many problems are also being born due to the arrival of population of villages. Similarly, from the observation of various rural data, it is known the pressure of population is increasing in the village too. Joint families are breaking up, the size of agriculture is getting smaller, the pressure on the land is increasing. The main reason for this has been illiteracy of means of livelihood, family attachment, time of pure environment, etc. Millions of people move every year to the cities and towns in the village due to the multiplicity of factories. One of the main reasons for the migration to the villager has also been the Green Revolution. Due to the increase in fertility and productivity of the land through the Green Revolution, the village has been an area of attraction for the people. Along with this, due to the development of a small industrial areas based on the background of good facilities, advanced seed and abundance of agriculture, there has been further migration from village to village. Mobility, socio-economic factor of change. Mobility in India society is found in two forms, horizontal and vertical. Example of social mobility being traditional society are rarely found here, while horizontal social mobility is found more here. The following example can be given of this type of mobility. Lower caste people took higher education and held high position. Many studies related to social mobility in India show that a traditional relationship between caste and occupation is ending now and a person is no longer attached to his traditional occupation. The importance of economic factor is bringing about social change has been accepted by all scholars. Due to economic factors such as women working with men, boys and girls are doing day-night shift in call center as desire to be financially independent. With the establishment of democracy in the independent India, there has been an increase in social mobility, regional, intra and external, commercial and intra-provincial, familial, inter-kinship, inter-religious, international mobility. Social mobility is found more in cities than in villages. The main reason for the low and linear mobility in Indian society is the caste system. And Srinivas has explained, Dr. Srinivas explained Sanskritization in the form of social mobility among the Gad and Uri people of India and Kurg of South India. During the British rule, due to the spread of education, the impact of Western civilization and culture on Indian society, there was a change in social dynamic in the traditional Indian society. The relationship between caste and business began to break down. Women are gradually becoming self-reliant by doing job, raising their status in the family and society. These are the mobility. And now we are going to talk about Green Revolution and spread of capitalist agriculture. When the agricultural system was based on feudal inheritance, then new technology, high-yielding seed was introduced. At the time, the existence of many small, marginal and landless units enabled the zamindar to accumulate wealth through lease and high land rents and high interest rate created insurmountable obstacles in the development of capitalist agriculture. It is only the technological changes that generate the expectation of quantitative increase in expects benefits. Can the surplus be applied to productive activities? These changes These are obtained by the combined use of irrigation with seeds, fertilizer and pesticides. The necessary growth in agriculture could be achieved by relying on the rich cultivator and zamindars. It was an authorized view. Accordingly, physical and financial infrastructures were provided in these people. High yielding through government machinery, seeds, subsidized fertilizers and pesticides were provided. At the same time, favorable market conditions were also created by fixation of minimum prices. Initially, the spread of the new technology was limited to the irrigated wheat belt state of Punjab, Haryana and western Uttar Pradesh. By the mid 1970s, a new discovery was made in rice production and it reached the western states. During the 1980s, it spread to the eastern part of Bengal, Orissa and Bihar. It was only in 1980s that hybrid seed of cotton, oil and coarse cereals were introduced. Thus the expansion of capitalist production was carried out with the expansion of new technology in the intermediate state. From the diagram of the state which data on the ratio of hard labor market trend and capitalist growth. Now we will see here the social change in rural India. It is true that the pace of change is very slow in rural communities as compared to urban communities. But even in villages today, there is a clear change in the status, occupation, education, attitude, and behavior of the person. In fact, the rural community today is in a state of transition in which, on the one hand, new social values and behavior patterns are being understood in the rural area, where on the other hand the villagers have not been able to give up the traditional characteristics completely due to the influence of many circumstances. From this point of view, there exists a continuity between tradition and modernity in rural society. To explain the process of social change in the rural community, Rogers have divided it into three phases: inventions, diffusion, and effect. Invention is a process in which new ideas are developed. In this way, invention basically means invention or innovation of the ideas, not material invention. Diffusion is the process by which new ideas are transmitted to a particular group or class. Change is the result of this process. Whether the innovations are accepted or rejected by the villagers, both the situation create change in the rural social life. When new ideas related to social change start influencing the social system, then naturally changes begin to arise in the structure and characteristic of the society. Gradually, new way of behavior start affecting many people in the group at the ideological level. The situation which arises from the change of thought, we call it immanent change. These changes are generally not affected by external conditions. Any other new ideas originate outside the social system, but due to the contact of the system with the group bound by new ideas, the change becomes apparent. Then such a change is called contact change. In the context of rural life, it is necessary to keep in mind that new invention and ideas are influencing the villages today. They do not originate in the rural society itself, but in some external groups. But gradually it starts affecting the entire rural life. How does this process work for change in life? This can be explained mainly on two grounds. In the first community, whenever a member gets knowledge of innovation and accept it, then gradually other villagers also establish contact with him to get knowledge of new way of behavior. This single person start acting as the main communicator for, or you can say key communication, for the spread of new mode of behavior. This process is called selective contact change. The second situation is that in which a government official, or by establishing contact with the people of the village by the planner, they are encouraged to adopt new way of outside. The change arising out of this situation is called direct contact change. In today's life, both of these, it is the process which have brought about widespread changes in all areas of rural life. This means that industrialization, urbanization, education, political movement, and social acts are those conditions producing changes which can be considered as belonging to the first class, whereas village, panchayat, literacy, community development program, and other similar development schemes can be included in the second category related to rural transformation. Due to the effect of all these conditions, the major changes that have taken place in the rural community today can be briefly explained. The changes related to marriage are mainly seen in the field of child marriage, mismatch, widow marriage, intercaste marriage, and dowry system. Indian rural life, marital relationship has been considered as a permanent relationship of whole life, but due to the influence of Western philosophy of life, industrial culture, now even in village, divorce is not seen as a social crime. Until recently, the determination of the marriage relation of children was entirely a matter of the will of the parents and the doer of the family. But now there has been a vast change in the situation. The educational people of the village have also started to understand that for the purpose of ending child marriage, sweetness of marital relation, and organization of family life, it is appropriate to give limited freedom to boys and girls to choose life partner. Not only has it happened that if a person marries an intercaste, the nature of social disapproval or condemnation of life has not been as serious as before. Villager to child marriage, the average age of marriage in rural communities is still very low as compared to urban community. But due to the influence of modern education, industrialization and urban culture, the age of marriage has increased to a great extent than before. The justification for the increase in the age of marriage was first accepted by the upper caste, and later the backward and scheduled caste started increasing the marriage, taking the upper caste as their reference group. And changes in rural caste structure. The caste system has been the most important basis of the rural social structure of India. After independence in India, there have been so many changes in the rules and beliefs related to the caste system. Some people believe that after the attainment of independence in India, due to the attainment of legal equality of all caste and the abolition of untouchability by law, social distance on the basis of caste in the village has definitely reduced. It is a definite fact that today the concept of untouchability is not related to a caste as much as there was clear division between different castes in the traditional rural society on the basis of food related restriction. And in the village, a young influenced by modern education, urban culture, industrial environment is emerging, which sees the restriction related to the caste system only as a stereotype. Changes in social life. The field of social life is very broad, but for the case of study, we are going to explain the nature of rural social change by mentioning the change related to family, marriage, caste, structure, values, and attitude under it. Changes in family life. Indian rural family have been revered in the form of joint family since very ancient time, but due to the effect of present conditions, vast changes have been taken place in the structure of family of rural joint family. Most of the villagers are now beginning to consider the joint family as inconvenient for themselves. As a result of this, the family is no longer the most important institution to establish control in the village. In the traditional family, patriarchal family, every member was ready to fulfill unlimited responsibility selflessly and sacrificially. But today, the new generation of people do not consider it. As a result of which, the characteristic of family is getting lost in the village. This means that now most of the people are not ready to surrender their personality development only in the name of family prestige or tradition. Change in rural marriage and change in rural values and belief. Just point out these things. Changes in rural economic life. Traditional rural economic life of India was completely dependent on agriculture, and the nature of agriculture was mainly related to consumption. After independence, when many development plan of rural reconstruction were implemented in India as a result of the extensive changes that started taking place in rural economic structure. In the field of agriculture, all villagers are adopting modern technology according to their needs. And the condition of this class is improving rapidly due to the abolition of a bonded labor system by law. As a result, not only has the gap between big and a small farmer in the village been reduced, but the tendency of monopoly on the agriculture production is also decreasing continuously. Due to the effect, the economic condition of ordinary villager could not improve as much as big farmers have benefited from this scheme. Changes in political life. And as a result, there has been a significant change in the power structure and political participation in the rural area. And some people are of the opinion that the entry of political parties in the village has led to the spread of various political theories on the ideology of the villagers. And political consciousness has now become associated with the regional and all India level. Changes in religious life. In the tradition, the importance of religion was paramount, and all the work at the individual and collective level was conducted on the basis of religious life. Being completely dependent on nature, religion was the most important agent of individual and social control. Today, due to the spread of new technology and education in rural life, important change have been started taking place in the traditional form of religion. There is always a contradictory relationship between religion and science. When the influence of science increases in any field of practice, then the religion remains a passive institution. Perhaps this is the reason of the religion rules are no longer enforced as strictly in the village, because the meaning of the beliefs and rules related to the religion has changed. And now it is not considered unreasonable to ignore the interest of the entire village of the sake for the sake of the individual selfishness. The result of this is that today the village has the characteristics of self-reliance. In the field of consumption, there has been an increasing in the prevalence of such items in the village which are not compatible with the means and community life of the village. Due to the increasing imbalance between resources and need, there has been an increase in property related crime in the village too. Factor of change in rural life. Now I will count it. Various scholars have analyzed the present change arising in rural life in the context of many conditions. Dr. A.R. Desai has divided the fact of rural change in two major parts, the consciousness and unconscious. For example, different type of natural condition, different condition resulting from mechanization and cultural element are unconscious factor which create a situation of change as a process. Under the conscious factor, Dr. Desai has mentioned many such methods by which change is produced in a systematic manner. 6 methods are important: persuasive method, demonstration method, compulsory method, method of social pressure, educational method, and contact method. All these methods explain such effort by which villagers are trained in a particular method to bring change in their lives and adopt new type of ideas and behavior. If we want to analyze rural changes on a coordinated basis of all these conscious and unconscious factors, then they can be understood mainly in the context of the following factor. Urbanization. Urbanization is the main factor for social changes and new means of communication. Traditional rural communities were self-sufficient and simple because the needs of the villagers were fulfilled with their own village. But new means of communication change a rural life. And mode of modern education, also agent of social change in rural life. Democratic leadership and land reform. New land reform in India had a huge impact on rural life. Hereafter, the evolution of zamindari, when the villagers got land ownership, when they got independent right, naturally their economic condition started improving rapidly. With the improvement in the economic condition, the life of the villagers started getting free from those traditions, superstitions and rituals which still some time ago they considered the only basis of their helpless life. From this point of view, land reform has proved to be indirect but important factor of rural social change. New technology of agriculture, new techniques of agriculture, social legislation and development schemes. And next point, role of industrialization, urbanization in rural transformation. Even here we could add role of multinational companies, role of globalization, industrialization and urbanization in rural transformation. As an agriculture community, we have traditional form of religion, politics, education, production, social system for thousands of years. In this traditional rural life, the stability of primary relation agriculture, cottage industry were seen as the only accepted way of life. Due to the inability to compete with the production in large quantity, the cottage industry in the village became new. Lakhs of people engaged in this occupation. Villagers have been more conscious in areas like ambition toward education, secular orientation, sense of equality, self-confidence, and political participation. Farmers have also become more aware of different types of innovation and are trying to adopt them to the maximum extent. All these changes are clear sign of modernization in the village, globalization and crisis in Indian agriculture. In 1990s, a structural reform programs and the WTO trade system created a new crisis in rural living. The new economy has to some extent brought us back to the colonial era where the process of accumulation and utilization is once again being controlled by metropolitan urban capital. End of state intervention. The state has withdrawn its previously declared role of market intervention for the economic security of domestic producers and for the protection of all small producers and vulnerable segment among them. And many small and medium-sized irrigation network projects remain incomplete not only because of being controversial but also due to the paucity of funds. The energy sector has been privatized in the last decade and water privatization is a major issue in the coming decade. The scheme to meet the economic need of a small and marginal farmer have been completely abolished. Entry of industry in the Indian agriculture, a fundamental changes in the structure of the international political economy relating to food is the emergence of multinational agricultural food regulation which seek to organize production and use in national economies according to their investment and marketing objectives. Due to the land restriction law, the entry of industry into direct agriculture production in India has been prohibited. Cultivation on a large scale as required by the companies is not allowed due to the following restriction. Only the land of plantation area has been exempted from the Restriction Act. Capitalist farming, which was controlled by foreign companies, is present in the area since the pre-independence period. The average size of cultivation is 88 hectares in Assam and 59 hectares in Kerala. With the new definition of land reclamation, there is increasing pressure to allow companies to work in the field of direct agricultural production, especially horticulture, floriculture and agroforestry. Now the demand is to increase the land restriction limit to a great extent or it should be abolished completely. As already mentioned that many state governments are ready to accept the demand. The Maharashtra government has already taken the initiative to exempt unions, companies and cooperatives from the land lease law for the purpose of horticulture. Such unit can buy bajra, waste or khal land and take cultivable land on lease. The area of farm can be as large as 100,000 acres. During this time, the companies have acquired vast area of land in Odisha and southern state for aquaculture. In this process, a large number of small and sogant farmers have been uprooted. Many companies are entering into agroforestry by cheating the Land Prohibition Act. They buy the generic and hand it over to individual on payment of a substantial amount and promise them attractive profit in return. Nevertheless, the design of the agricultural market to control overpopulation in the agricultural sector is far more ambitious than what it can achieve from direct agriculture. With the consent of the Government of India, agricultural trade is increasingly controlling the flow of investment and output in the agricultural sector. There is framework to change the method of the land industry according to their heart benefit under the games on contract farming tag. The cultivators are employed to produce and supply a specified product of a specified quality in a specified quantity at a specified price at a specified time. The company also provided seeds, fertilizer, technical loans, farming equipment to the farmer. And on the other hand, the agro-processing industry, which was earlier reserved for small-scale industries, has been open to big corporations and multinational companies. In the coming year, very rapid change in land use and land ownership pattern can be expected in Indian agriculture. The transition from a state control system to a market control system dominated by large multinational companies has affected different sections of the farming community in different ways. Confusion prevailing in the group of big farmer on the neoliberal system. And on the one hand, they think that trade liberalization, diversity of agricultural products and entry of agricultural trade are beneficial for them. On the other hand, they are apprehensive that they will not be able to compete due to cheap imports through huge subsidies in the agricultural sector in developed country. Thus, while Saj Joshi welcomed the proposal for the Incal draft of Uruguay round peasant movement in Uttar Pradesh and Karnataka opposed it. Management of farming on lease by multinational companies, essentially with medium or large farmer. Big farmer along with the industry sector are pressurizing the state government to amend the land restriction law and integrate it on lease land. Micro level studies show that the opposite tenancy theory, which was prevalent only in Punjab and Haryana during 1970s and 1980s, and spread rapidly to the state in 1990. But it should be noted that in the new scenario, the large group of farmers is presently bewildered by the declining trend in the prices of primary commodities in the world market and unsustainability of a small and medium farms and increasing landlessness. Many small and medium farmers have shifted from production of coarse cereals to the production of soya beans, new variety of cotton and oilseed. Due to this change, the expenses need to be increased significantly. Small farmers are completely ruined. The indebtedness and consequent suicides by farmers in Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka have attracted the attention of the media. Whatever they commit suicide or not, whether they commit suicide or not, a small and ordinary farmer are rapidly depriving themselves of their land resource. Only for highly skilled people there is a space. The social service sector of agriculture itself has the potential to absorb additional labor at low productivity and low income level. Under the state-supported industrialization of the Indian economy, the agricultural-oriented transition has reached a different position. The new liberal global order in the 21st century has brought about a qualitative changes in the functioning of the non-preventable national economies around the world. Such a trend is already visible. There is no outside employment for the labor force drawn out of agriculture. The consolidation of rural production was carried out effectively, which was important for the introduction of modern technology and mechanization. Green Revolution and the spread of capitalist agriculture. When the agricultural system was based on feudal domination, then new technology was introduced. The existence of many small marginal landless units enabled the zamindari to accumulate wealth through lease and increase in inequality among farmers. The following effects of increasing capitalist tendency in Indian agriculture are noteworthy. Increase in inequality among farmers. The state has opened new dimensions of opportunities, providing benefit to the big farmers. The cultivators and zamindars themselves took their land back from lease market for cultivation. Reduced employment opportunities in agriculture. Capitalist agriculture destroys the ability to absorb labor in the agricultural sector in an uncertain way. The movement of rich peasants emerged in Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, Karnataka, indeed in Punjab and Haryana. He put a stop to agriculture tax and demanded favorable conditions in agriculture trade. Producer class in goods. In France, the stubborn agriculture did not allow capitalist influence to take place for a long time and frustrated it. At whatever stage the bourgeoisie's peasantry rises and whether it occurs or not, it is the center of the state in the midst of pre-capitalist structure and property relation and agrarian transition. Even today in most of rural areas, the identity of a person is based on his folk culture. In such a situation, the individual may not be ready to completely eliminate the folk culture in order to maintain its regional conformity. The process of modernization in the Indian rural community has also greatly influenced the folk culture. As a process, not only new laws were created, but every person was given the right to openly criticize such traditional practices which are conservative and hinder the progress of society. Under traditional folk culture, rural economy was not based on organized market and the individual produced only for his own consumption. In order to promote and spread dance, music and drama related to folk culture, arrangements are being made in the villages, and many villagers are also spread the culture of their area to other area so that they can spread more and more through it. This is the reason that today the guardian deity of the village is not recognized as it was till some time ago. It is clear from the above discussion that the process of modernization has affected the entire rural life, including folk culture, in a big way. In spite of its partial truth, it is not entirely appropriate. The reality is that even after various processes of change, the existence of folk culture in rural life exists in its modified form. And a scheme of rural reconstruction in India. Now we will talk about the impact of market economy on Indian village. India. The pace of change was accelerated by the beginning of British hegemony and the process of modernization that followed. The colonial vested interest imposed a new type of capitalist economy in agriculture. Under the British rule, land also became a commodity and property. A new type of land revenue system was introduced to promote monetization. When we look at the village of India, we find that the traditional rural economy was primarily a subsistence-oriented economy aimed at meeting the consumption needs of the local population. The Jajmani system was the basis of economic organization. Under this, people of different castes were involved in the exchange of goods and services according to local customs. But it also true that the market played a minor role in the subsistence-based economy as well. The people where local informal markets were held in different periods, but there was more emphasis on socio-cultural activities than on formal economic deals. There was also the possibility of establishing interrelationship between group of villages in the heart held on fixed duration. Economic exchange in such market typically resembled redistribution or barter. Thus, it can be said that a limited amount of cash economy and market exchange has been running in pre-industrialized urban center in India since medieval times. Along with this process of agriculturalization was also observed, especially among the tribal communities. The system of determining land revenue was implemented by the British ruler, under which the rent had to be paid in cash. This led to rapid start of garnering maximum cash from their crops or producing commercial cash crop. Thus, the rural economy was also the beginning of the spread and monetization of the market economy to Indian villages, linked to the urban and later the national economy. After independence, modern means of transport and communication were started by the government. This campaign was run largely under economic development program so that the market economy extended completely to the rural India. Along with this, everyday item available in urban market like soap, toothpaste, hosiery, etc. became available between villages and towns. On the other hand, poultry item from a village in North India have reached the market of the metropolis from far away area. With the becoming a wealthy class in the farming society, there has been a huge demand for comfort goods in the village as well. A.R. Desai in his seminal contribution mentioned four major characteristics of trend of change in rural India. Rapid transformation of agrarian society from a subsistence-based economy to a market economy. Rapid change brought about by adoption of modern technology, decline of middlemen such as Zamindar and Visvedar. Now the main objective behind agriculture production became to grow surplus crop to be sold in the market. This paved the way for greater penetration of market forces. It also encouraged consumption-oriented lifestyle among the rural people. Consumption of goods manufactured by urban mechanical method and keeping them in the house became a status symbol. This rural transformation driven by market economy, or now we can say the multinational company, can be described in the following form. The new market economy created a new class of rich farmer, big trader, petty official and political activists. It also led to the establishment of a large number of new facilities, especially credit facilities. Now credit cards have also reached the rural society. Now better material like tractor, water pump, harvester, etc. are also being used. The gap between the rich land owning class of agriculturists and extremely poor landlessness laborer depend. Monetization has increased opportunity for social mobility. Due to the different ability of different members of the joint family to raise income, the practice of establishing a small family started. Contemporary Indian society, this led to the practice of occupational mobility and adoption of a new occupation. The rise of occupation-free caste structure which dealt a serf blow to the traditional Jajmani system, ethnic barrier to economic development and mobility. It has also promoted women empowerment directly and indirectly, and Of all these features, some recent events have been the most talked about. These incidents are of the agrarian distress caused by dependence on agriculture and suicide of farmers due to it. These suicides are also a matter of concern in the areas of green revolution like Punjab, Haryana, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh. A.R. Desai, while analyzing the mystery of farmer suicide, has told that there are some common trends and reasons for this. He had rightly said that the promotion of cash crop through the use of hybrid seed, chemical fertilizers and insecticide in the semi-thriving region has had many adverse consequences. Overall, there is a lack of coordination between the ecological specificity of those areas and commercial agricultural practices. There is increasing uncertainty and risk in agriculture due to changes in climate, especially in rainfall, due to which agriculture is becoming a victim of ecological crisis. The economic crisis along with the ecological crisis has made the situation worse. Commercial agriculture, however, is conducted on the basis of the use of external raw material, but the institutional credit for purchasing these raw material is available in very limited quantity to the farmer. Most of the farmers take huge loan to do commercial farming since the small and marginal farmers do not get immediate and easy access to institutional credit. They are forced to adopt modern agriculture or take loans from private money lenders, a high interest rate to continue the farming business. They also get easy loans from local money lenders and money lenders who thrive on interest bearing. In the era of ecological crisis, such farmers have to take more loan due to pest attacks or disease in their crop. The introduction of commercial agriculture is basically dry agriculture area has had an impact on the social fabric as well. In this type of agriculture, the principle of local or indigenous knowledge and caste and kin relations do not help. In such farming, the role of agents and agencies of agribusiness and agricultural extension workers remain prominent, and there is no question of traditional institution providing information. Its disadvantage is that these external elements often do not pay any attention to the interest of the illiterate farmer. Huge price fluctuations are part of the market economy and add to the problem. Farmers are left alone due to high cost of production in the absence of fixed procurement or support price by government agencies. Farmers also complain of rampant adulteration of pesticide and no guarantee of new varieties of cash crop seed. When two consecutive crops fail, the farmer's gain sits. Changing agriculture practice, decline in government and administration support, diminishing power of farmer against market force, increasing risk in agriculture and lack of community support can easily be gauged by how much farmers are getting. You will have to face personal estate. And in the event of crop failure or extreme fluctuation in the prices beyond their control, the capital attack on farmer without any support of security destroys a small farmer and make them poor, just as the incident of suicide are a symbol of the despair spread in an area. Similarly, the deprivation of the food grain eaten to survive should also be taken seriously. As Susan George pointed out, the disappearance of a staple cereals in a given area without an adequate alternative economic base is a threat to food security and also makes local communities vulnerable. Thus, the incidence of suicides is directly related to the economic factors associated with the market economy. Now we will talk about a structural constraint in Indian agriculture. Historical scenario in India, the possibilities of capitalist industrialization arising out of increasing productivity in the pre-capitalist agricultural system were ended under colonial rule. The rigid land revenue system and commercialization of agriculture in line with imperial interest destroyed the production base of the present different economy. Large section of the peasant were made penniless and the landless were made landless. In the year 1931, 32% of rural workers were classified as landless. On the other hand, the land and the resulting occupancy remained confined to a few hands. The division was neither used to increase agriculture productivity nor to induce growth in construction. Due to the limited size of the domestic market, both the processes were stalled. India as a colony provided not only raw materials to British industries but also market to British manufacturers. The limited development of the construction industry replaced the craftsman, but it could not generate enough number of jobs for the poor farmer. The uprooted farmers were forced to find opportunity to earn their livelihood in agriculture. Now, failed land reform. Now we will talk about the land reform. Land reform was an important part of the economic program of national freedom movement. An elaborated law was drawn up after independence with the aim of achieving equitable distribution of land and other resources in rural India by providing agricultural land and ending oppression and exploitative feudal relation. In general, all are unanimous that the land reform program has completely failed to achieve its objective. Despite the abolition of indirect zamindari and middlemen, the wealthy upper caste zamindar maintained feudal dominance through political, administrative and judicial system. Wherever some progress was made in reducing the domination of feudal interest, the wealthy peasant very quickly accomplished it by increasing their dominance at the political and economic level. Tenancy laws in the states only failed to take the tenancy underground. The imposition of land restriction and only a very small part of the land was redistributed and it was mostly barren and low grade land. There is a vast difference between law making and its implementation at the state level. Thus economic feudalism remained safe in Bihar, but Marxist government in West Bengal and Kerala succeeded in transforming the rural production bases. The consolidation of land in Punjab was done effectively, which was important for the introduction of modern technology and monetization and mechanization. Thus, it is necessary that a proper decision should be taken in the regard at the all India level. In fact, the difference here is so great that according to some scholars it is futile to take the same decision all over India. A decade later, the Green Revolution came to the fore, pushing back the issue of land reform.